Daniel Ricciardo's story just keeps getting more interesting, and in the latest news it looks like the Australian driver is not going to leave Racing Bulls as easily as we thought. The 8-time race winner seems to have strong support from Racing Bulls' main sponsors Visa and Cash App, as they're not ready to give up on the Australian driver as easily as Red Bull and the Faenza team are. But with this in mind, could the entire future of Racing Bulls be decided by what their main sponsors want? And if so, how will Lawson be hurt by this turn of events? Singapore Grand Prix was a rollercoaster of feelings for Ricciardo, who was seen sitting in the car at the end of the race for a longer time to take in the feeling of being an F1 driver. What could be the last time in his career? Even during his after-race interviews, Ricciardo said that he gave it his all, and that he understands this might be it, which was further proven by his team boss Lauren Mecchi, who said that the fastest lap at the last try from Ricciardo was to honor what could have been his last career race. Anyway, stories have started to go around even before the Singapore Grand Prix that we're seeing Ricciardo's last race, and that Lawson will step in from Austin onwards, something that Marco promised that we would see being fixed right after the Singapore weekend. But now a very fresh twist has been provided from one of the most important parts in this entire story, the sponsors of Racing Bulls. In order for you to understand the situation better, you need to see the bigger picture of Visa and Cash App, the main sponsors of Racing Bulls, and how their power could change everything in Red Bull's group. Before the team was renamed from AlphaTauri, there were worries that lack of results and performance could put the team up for sale or for going out of business, which was one of the main trigger reasons as to why they need either a solid lineup of drivers or solid money to keep them going in the sport. When it was clear that Dev won't deliver what he's been asked to deliver, the arrival of Ricciardo came with the main story that he's there to replace Perez and outperform the heck out of the car and Tsunoda in order to be considered as a real candidate for Red Bull's seat. What many forgot is that he was also the main reason why companies like Visa and Cash App decided to enter the sport, because of Ricciardo's marketing value and his impact on the American market, which is more or less the main target for these companies. They've gone to the point of being main sponsors for Racing Bulls, which means that they're putting in heavy money flow to keep things going, and that might be one of the reasons why they're now 2 steps above where they were this time of the year in 2023. Sitting at P6 in the Constructors' Championship now, these two companies are not finding it easy when it comes to Ricciardo being replaced, because according to Kim Illman, a photographer and Paddock insider, Ricciardo's departure is reportedly being blocked by Visa and Cash App because they see the Australian driver as being very good for their business. This is the dark side of the sport that few talk about, because while Ricciardo didn't really do what was being asked of him, which is to outperform Tsunoda by a lot and put himself on the map when it comes to replacing Perez, the situation is now shifting in his favor because he has the backup of the 2 most important money factors of the Faenza team. It's not like they do not feel thankful for Lawson, but the fact is that these companies are here because of business and business only. Of course, the performance of the New Zealand-based driver can put the team well on the map and high in the midfield if he proves to be the talent that Marco and Horner believe he is, but he's not bringing any sponsors behind him, and that is really hurting his entrance campaign to an unfixable point. This is how the sport works, and there's little to nothing that the rest could do, and we have to throw a simple look to Lance Stroll and his situation with Aston Martin to see how things work when you have the money back up behind you. Of course, Ricciardo is far away from a paid driver, and even Tsunoda himself admitted that the feedback that his teammate gave after a messy session was far more detailed and complete, which is something that he's now learning to do himself. But still, the points are in the Japanese driver's favor, and that's what makes it harder for Ricciardo to justify his stay at the team. Christian Horner himself has spoken about the current situation with the drivers, and from a stance in which he was sure that Ricciardo should have been the driver to replace Perez if he dropped the ball next to Verstappen. Horner is now open to looking at all the options that they have available on the table, which doesn't include hiring a driver from outside of their pool such as George Russell. When talking about the current with the situation in Red Bull with their drivers, the British man stated, "We've now got a period of time where we'll evaluate all of the relevant performance of the drivers. It's just a natural break in the season to reflect on that. There's a bigger picture beyond Daniel. He's just part of the puzzle. We know Daniel very well. We know what he's capable of, how he drives a car. We have that knowledge." Again, it's very important to note that while Ricciardo's presence on the track is valued a lot, there's a situation that's going on behind closed doors, and that is his marketing value. This is the main reason also admitted by Marco and Horner as to why the team of Red Bull have continued the way they did, and why they've also gone on their separate way of independence from the Austrian team as much as they can by hiring people like Peter Bayer and Lauren Mecchi. They've made some strong statements on the field, but all of this has been provided thanks to the sponsors of Visa and Cash App, who has been harshly criticized by F1 fans as they're feeling like the sport is slowly but surely turning into one big marketing place which has no place for the real motorsport teams and companies. All of this puts Red Bull in a very difficult position, because while they want to promote their drivers from within and give chances to the ones who have proven to be very fast on many occasions, it's now extremely difficult to make a decision based on their current situation, because throughout The entire weekend in Singapore we looked at a lot of confusion from the relevant team members from both Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Lauren Mecchi seemed a bit clumsy in his responses, and it was a weekend in which we received a feeling that Ricciardo is driving his last F1 race, but there's no official confirmation whatsoever regarding his status. A similar scenario has emerged back in Spa when Verstappen was allegedly promised that he will have a new teammate in Ricciardo, but it turned out that the sponsors behind Perez have pushed Red Bull hard in keeping the Mexican driver for at least the remainder of 2024. This is why the pattern of similarity with what's happened back then with Red Bull and what's happening right now with Ricciardo and Racing Bulls is just way too big of a coincidence in order to be understood lightly. And what we can expect is some difficult period ahead of us, and it's going to be more difficult for Lawson, who's now in this serious trouble of not having an F1 career thanks to these policies that Racing Bulls have agreed with the sponsors of Cash App and Visa, even though he's proven in a 5-race stint back in 2023 that he is capable of taking an underperforming car to the points, finishing P9 in Singapore in his first ever outing at this race. It still wasn't enough for Red Bull to put him in the mix straight away, but what the Austrian team now needs to think about may be bigger than Visa and Cash App, and that is the future of Verstappen. The 3-time world champion's future with the Austrian team is now under serious question marks from 2026 onwards, because Marco fueled a potential exit due to the fact that Max can and will drive with a team that he could win races with. On top of that, the problems with the RB20 that may or may not be fixed in Austin could push the 3-time world champion to think about an exit clause in his contract sooner rather than later, which then puts Red Bull in an impossible situation in which they have to choose a driver to replace Max. Some pretty big shoes to fill if you ask me. So a 1-year training for Lawson might be exactly what they'll need as they enter the rebuild phase, or as Horner said, maybe hiring from outside. And bringing George Russell could fix this issue as well. Anyway, the sponsors have their own say in the drivers' lineup, and with everything that's going on with Ricciardo in Racing Bulls right now, do you think that there's a chance in which the Australian driver will keep the seat just because the business side of running with these two companies? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.